Have you ever wondered why you swipe your credit card the hardest right when the rest of your world feels completely upside down? Picture this. It's Tuesday evening. You're sitting on the edge of your bed, staring blankly at the wall. The room is quiet, but your mind is incredibly loud. You had one of those days where nothing went right. An unexpected car repair bill showed up. You had a tense argument with someone you love over something trivial. Your chest feels tight. Your shoulders are locked up, and there's a heavy sinking feeling in your stomach. You feel like a passenger in your own life, watching things happen to you without any ability to hit the brakes. In that exact moment of exhaustion, you don't reach for a book or a glass of water. You reach for your phone. The screen lights up the dark room. Muscle memory guides your thumb to that one shopping app or food delivery service you always use. You start scrolling. At first, it's just to distract yourself. You look at things you don't really need. A new jacket, expensive takeout, or a random gadget. You don't even really want these things. If you saw them on a good day, you'd probably scroll right past them. But today isn't a good day. Today, your brain is screaming for some kind of a win. As you scroll, that tight feeling in your chest starts to loosen just a tiny bit. The bright colors and endless options whisper a quiet promise to you. They tell you that you still have choices. They tell you that you still have some authority over your environment. You tap an item, and the screen transitions smoothly to the checkout page. There it is, that big, bright button that says Buy Now. Your thumb hovers over it. Deep down, the rational part of your brain is waving a tiny red flag. It's reminding you about that car repair bill. It's telling you that this purchase will only make things tighter next week. But that rational voice is incredibly quiet right now. It's completely drowned out by the noise of a chaotic day. You press the button. A little loading circle spins for a fraction of a second, and then a green checkmark appears. Order confirmed. In that exact instant, a warm, comforting wave washes over you. The heaviness in your stomach lifts. For just a few seconds, the world makes sense again. You did a thing, and the universe responded exactly how you wanted it to. Just a clean, predictable transaction. You set the phone down and take a deep breath. You actually feel a little bit of relief. It's not about the jacket or the takeout. It has absolutely nothing to do with the physical item that'll show up at your door. It's entirely about the sensation of taking action. In a day where you felt completely powerless, spending money was the fastest, most frictionless way to prove to yourself that you still have control. But the relief is a ghost. By the time you wake up the next morning, that warm feeling is completely gone. In its place is a slow, creeping sense of dread. You check your bank account and see the pending charge. Now, on top of everything else, you've got a new problem. You have less money, less margin for error, and a fresh wave of guilt washing over you. You call yourself undisciplined. You tell yourself you're just bad with money. You try to force a sheer act of willpower over your financial habits. But the truth is, this cycle has nothing to do with your willpower. When life spins out of control, your brain doesn't want logic. It wants agency. And right now, your credit card is the easiest weapon your brain can find to fight back against the chaos. If that sounds familiar, you are not alone. It is a terrifyingly common experience. Millions of people go through this exact same cycle every single week. You carry the weight of a difficult job, family expectations, and the rising cost of simply existing. It is incredibly exhausting. Yet, when we talk about money, we almost always leave this exhaustion out of the conversation. Society tells us that if we just had more discipline, we would not have this problem. Financial gurus say we should just stop buying coffee or ordering takeout when things get tight. We are told to just make a rigid budget and stick to it, as if human beings are perfectly rational robots who never feel pain, panic, or overwhelming stress. We are fed a lie that personal finance is purely a math problem. But you probably already know the math. You probably know how to make a budget. You likely know exactly how much money you have left in your checking account at any given moment. You are not stupid. You know that spending money you do not have is a terrible idea. But knowing something logically and feeling something emotionally are two completely different things. When you are running on empty, your brain stops caring about what makes sense on a spreadsheet. It cares about survival. It cares about finding an immediate escape route from the pressure cooker of your daily life. Financial logic requires a massive amount of mental energy. It requires forward thinking and delayed gratification. But when you are deeply stressed, that mental energy is completely depleted. Psychologists have a name for this phenomenon. They call it ego depletion. It basically means that willpower is not a fixed personality trait. It is a battery. And every single time you have to force yourself to do something difficult during the day, that battery drains a little bit more. Your self-control is a finite resource, and modern life is designed to drain it as fast as possible. Think about your average Tuesday. You wake up tired and force yourself out of bed. That drains the battery. You deal with rush hour traffic or a crowded train. The battery drains more. You smile and nod at a boss or a client who is being completely unreasonable. You swallow your frustration instead of speaking your mind. A huge chunk of your willpower battery disappears right there. By the time you finally get home and shut the door, the battery is completely dead. This is the exact moment when you are most vulnerable. Your willpower battery is empty, but your stress levels are absolutely peaking. You need comfort, and you need it immediately. You do not have the energy to cook a complex, healthy meal or go do a tough workout at the gym. You need a low-effort, high-reward solution to make the bad feelings go away. Spending money is the ultimate low-effort, high-reward action in the modern world. It requires almost zero physical or mental energy. You just move your thumb across a piece of glass. But the psychological reward feels massive in the moment. It feels like you are finally treating yourself after a day of being treated poorly by the world. It feels like taking back your power. Then comes the trap. Because the relief is entirely temporary, you wake up the next day feeling even worse. You look at your shrinking bank balance, and a fresh wave of shame hits you. You promise yourself you will never do it again. You swear you will be more disciplined next time. But you are trying to fight a powerful biological stress response with a broken tool. We have to completely change how we look at this problem. We have to stop treating stress spending like a moral failure. It is not a character flaw. It is a highly predictable response to an overwhelming environment. Once you understand that your brain is just looking for a way to cope, you can stop fighting yourself and start building actual defenses. We cannot just rely on trying harder. Trying harder is exactly what got you exhausted in the first place. Instead, we have to look at the invisible forces that are actively taking advantage of your exhaustion. We have to look at how the entire system around us is perfectly engineered to catch you exactly when you fall. To truly remove the shame around this, we have to look at the numbers. Because the numbers prove that this is not just an isolated personal failure. This is a massive, systemic issue. According to data from the Federal Reserve and various financial institutions over the years, a staggering percentage of the population is walking a very thin tightrope. More than 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck at any given time. A huge portion of the country cannot cover a $400 unexpected emergency without putting it on a credit card or borrowing from a friend. That means the baseline state of existence for the majority of people is continuous, low-level financial panic. When you are living paycheck to paycheck, you are existing in a perpetual state of scarcity. Your brain is constantly calculating what you can and cannot afford. This mental background noise is exhausting. You are essentially running a complex background program in your mind at all times, tracking due dates, grocery prices, and utility bills. When an unexpected stressor hits, like a bad day at work or a family argument, that background program crashes. You simply do not have the cognitive bandwidth left to make a rational financial decision. The math proves that most people are already operating at their absolute limits before the bad day even begins. But the real tragedy is not just that people are stretched thin. The real tragedy is that we live in a society fundamentally engineered to exploit that exact vulnerability. We do not just live in a consumer economy anymore. We live in an algorithmic, attention-based economy. Every single app on your phone, every website you visit, and every social media feed you scroll through is designed by some of the smartest engineers and behavioral psychologists on the planet. Their entire job, the sole metric they are graded on, is figuring out how to get you to separate from your money as quickly and quietly as possible. These platforms do not just sell products, they study your behavior. They know when you are most active online. They know the exact time of day you are likely to be tired, vulnerable, and scrolling mindlessly. Have you ever noticed that you get hit with the most tempting, hyper-targeted ads late at night or right after you get off work? That is not an accident. The machine knows that your willpower battery is dead. It waits for you to be exhausted, and then it offers you a shiny, frictionless solution to your bad mood. Think about how spending money used to work just a few decades ago. If you had a terrible day and wanted to buy something to feel better, you actually had to put in a lot of effort. You had to find your car keys, drive through traffic, find a parking spot, walk into a physical store, pick up an item, stand in a line, and physically hand over cash or a plastic card to a human being. Every single one of those steps was a point of friction. Every step was a built-in opportunity for your rational brain to wake up, tap you on the shoulder, and ask if you really needed to be doing this. Today, all of that friction has been systematically eliminated. The modern world is obsessed with removing any barrier between your impulse and your bank account. We have one-click ordering, saved shipping addresses, and facial recognition payments. You can literally buy a $500 television or order $40 of overpriced sushi just by looking at your phone screen. The gap between feeling stressed and spending money has been reduced to milliseconds. There is absolutely no time for your rational brain to intervene. The people building these systems know exactly what they are doing. They understand that when you are stressed, you are looking for agency. You are looking for a way to assert control over your environment. So they package their products not as things, but as experiences of power. They sell you the illusion of convenience and self-care. They tell you that you deserve a treat because you work hard. They weaponize your own exhaustion against you, framing a financial transaction as a form of emotional therapy. This is why trying to outsmart your spending habits with pure willpower is a losing battle. You are taking a tired, stressed-out human brain and putting it up against a multi-billion-dollar digital infrastructure that never sleeps, never gets tired, and knows your psychological triggers better than you do. It is like bringing a wooden shield to a drone fight. You are going to lose, not because you are weak, but because the odds are mathematically stacked against you. Even the way we pay for things now is designed to obscure the reality of the transaction. We use buy now, pay later services that chop up a painful purchase into tiny, seemingly harmless pieces. We subscribe to endless monthly services because $10 a month does not feel like a threat, even though those microcharges are silently bleeding our cash flow dry. The entire financial ecosystem is built to make spending feel like a gentle breeze, while making saving feel like pushing a boulder up a hill. When you look at the macro picture, the shame starts to disappear. You are not a failure for falling into this trap. You are a biological creature responding exactly how you were programmed to respond inside a digital environment designed to catch you. Acknowledging this is incredibly freeing. It shifts the blame away from your character and puts it squarely on the mechanics of the system. But acknowledging the trap is only the first part of the equation, because the harsh truth is that the system is not going to change. The algorithms are not going to suddenly develop empathy and stop showing you ads when you are sad. The companies are not going to put the friction back into the checkout process. The world will continue to demand your money, and life will continue to throw stressful, chaotic days at you. Since we cannot change the society we live in, we have to change the invisible architecture of our own minds. We have to dive deep into the chemical warfare happening inside your brain before we can build the defenses to stop it. To understand this, we have to talk about cortisol. Cortisol is the primary stress hormone in your body. It is often painted as the villain, but it is actually a vital alarm system. When your brain perceives a threat, it floods your system with cortisol. This hormone tells your heart to beat faster, it tightens your muscles, and it narrows your focus. It prepares you to either fight the threat or run away as fast as you can. It is a brilliant system if the threat is a physical danger right in front of you. The problem is that our environment has evolved dramatically, but our brains have not changed at all. Your ancient alarm system cannot tell the difference between a literal life or death situation and a passive-aggressive email from your boss. It cannot distinguish between a predator and an unexpected bill. So when you have a chaotic, stressful day, your body is bathed in cortisol. Your physical alarm system is blaring at full volume, demanding that you take immediate action to neutralize the threat. But you cannot physically fight an email, and you cannot run away from a bill. You are trapped in a modern society where the ancient solutions no longer apply. This creates a massive buildup of tension. Your brain is screaming for a resolution to turn off the alarm, but the physical pathways to achieve that resolution are blocked. This is when the brain gets desperate. It starts scanning the environment for any possible way to self-soothe, any quick fix that will trick the system into feeling safe again. Enter the second major player in this chemical drama, dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, the feeling you get when you eat something delicious or win a prize. But neuroscientists have shown that dopamine is actually the anticipation chemical. It is the drive, the motivation, the intense craving that pushes you to seek a reward. When your cortisol levels are high and you are feeling completely overwhelmed, your brain uses dopamine to hunt for an immediate escape route. Because we live in a frictionless consumer environment, your brain has quickly learned that spending money is the most efficient way to generate a massive dopamine spike. The entire sequence of browsing an app, adding an item to a cart, and clicking purchase is a perfectly engineered dopamine loop. Your brain starts to anticipate the relief. It builds up the expectation that acquiring this new thing will somehow fix the internal chaos. And for a brief, shining moment, it actually works. When you complete the transaction, your brain registers it as a successful hunt. You identified a target, you took decisive action, and you secured a resource. The alarm system briefly shuts down. The cortisol levels drop, and a wave of chemical relief washes over you. Your ancient survival machine believes it has successfully navigated the crisis. This is why the act of buying feels so incredibly powerful in the moment. It is literally hacking your biology to simulate a victory. But this chemical hack is incredibly dangerous because it relies on a cognitive illusion known as mental accounting. When you are stressed, your prefrontal cortex, the logical, forward-thinking part of your brain, essentially goes offline. It is too exhausted to function. So, your emotional brain takes over, and it starts rationalizing the purchase. It tells you that spending $50 on takeout is not a waste of money, but a necessary investment in your mental health. It categorizes the spending not as a financial loss, but as an emotional survival tool. This state is heavily compounded by something called decision fatigue. Every choice you make throughout the day, no matter how small, burns cognitive energy. By the time you reach the end of a stressful Tuesday, your decision-making capacity is completely depleted. You do not have the energy left to weigh the long-term consequences of a purchase against your monthly budget. Your brain defaults to the path of least resistance, and right now, the path of least resistance is clicking a brightly colored button on your phone. When you combine high cortisol, a desperate hunt for dopamine, mental accounting, and decision fatigue, you have a perfect storm. You are not making a financial decision at all. You are executing an automated biological subroutine designed to alleviate pain. The tragedy is that the relief is entirely temporary. The physical item arrives, or the food is eaten, and the dopamine spike crashes. When the dopamine crashes, reality sets back in. The original stressors, the job, the relationships, the bills, they are all still there. But now, you have added a new stressor. You have less money. The realization hits, and the ancient alarm system trips all over again. A fresh wave of cortisol floods your system, triggered by the guilt and the anxiety of the new purchase. The cycle resets, tighter and more destructive than before. This is the invisible architecture of your financial anxiety. It is not a character flaw. It is a chemical loop. Understanding this loop is the most critical step, because you cannot outsmart biology with just good intentions. If you want to break the cycle of stress spending, you have to build systems that operate outside of your willpower. You have to build physical and digital barriers that protect your future self from your exhausted self. The first step to breaking this biological cycle is not promising yourself that you will be stronger next time. Strength is irrelevant when your battery is completely drained. Instead, you have to build an environment that protects you from your own exhaustion. I call this the friction fortress. Since you cannot control the chaos of the world, and you cannot stop your brain from producing cortisol on a bad day, you have to control the physical space between your impulse and your bank account. You have to artificially reintroduce the friction that the digital world has so carefully stripped away. Friction in physics is the resistance that one surface or object encounters when moving over another. It slows things down. In personal finance, friction is the amount of time and physical effort required to complete a transaction. It is the necessary gap between a feeling and an action. The entire modern economy is designed to reduce that gap to absolute zero. So your first line of defense is forcing that gap back open. You have to make spending money incredibly annoying. The easiest and most impactful way to start building this fortress is to completely sever the digital connection between your money and your devices. You need to go into your phone settings, your web browsers, and your favorite shopping apps, and you must manually delete every single saved credit card and debit card. You have to wipe the slate clean. No more autofill, no more one-click checkouts, no more saved shipping addresses. You have to force the system to forget you. Think about what happens when you do this. The next time you have a terrible Tuesday and you retreat to your bed to scroll through an app, the impulse will still be there. The dopamine loop will still try to activate. You will find an item, put it in your cart, and hit checkout. But instead of a smooth, instant victory, you are going to hit a wall. The screen will ask you to enter a 16-digit card number, an expiration date, and a security code. Suddenly, your brain has a problem. To get the dopamine hit, you now have to engage in physical effort. You have to put the phone down, get out of your warm bed, walk into the kitchen or the living room, dig through your bag or your coat pocket, find your wallet, pull out the physical card, walk back to the bed, and manually type in a string of numbers. That entire sequence takes maybe 2 or 3 minutes. But in the world of behavioral psychology, 3 minutes is an absolute eternity. During those 3 minutes, the physical effort forces your brain to wake up. The automated survival subroutine is interrupted. As you are standing in the kitchen holding a piece of plastic, your prefrontal cortex flickers back online. It gets a chance to ask the crucial question of whether you actually want this item or if you are just trying to medicate a bad mood. More often than not, the sheer annoyance of having to type the numbers is enough to make you abandon the cart completely. The second layer of the friction fortress is disabling biometric payments. Face ID, fingerprint scanners, and double-clicking the side of your phone are the ultimate enemies of intentional spending. They bypass the conscious brain entirely. When you pay with your face, you are not actually processing the reality of the transaction. You must go into your settings and force your phone to require a manual password for every single purchase or app download. Typing a complex password creates another tiny, vital window of time for logic to intervene. The third and most powerful layer of the fortress is the 72-hour delay rule. This is not a budget rule. It is a biological reset protocol. When the urge to buy something non-essential hits you, you do not tell yourself no. Telling yourself no triggers a feeling of deprivation, which only increases your stress levels. Instead, you tell yourself, yes, but not right now. You put the item in the online cart, and then you physically close the app and set a timer for exactly 3 days. This strategy completely short-circuits the dopamine loop. You still get a tiny bit of the anticipation chemical because you have committed to buying the item eventually. But by delaying the actual transaction, you deny your brain the immediate, destructive relief it is craving. You force the cortisol to dissipate on its own without using your credit card as a pacifier. Over those next 72 hours, a massive chemical shift happens in your body. The acute stress of the bad day fades away. You get some sleep, you eat a good meal, and your nervous system regulates itself. By the time the 3 days are up, you are looking at the item in your cart with a completely different brain. You are no longer operating from a place of panic and exhaustion. You are operating from a baseline state of calm. When you reach the end of the delay, you will find that the intense, burning desire to own that item has almost entirely vanished. You will look at the checkout screen and wonder why you ever wanted it in the first place. You will calmly delete it from your cart and move on with your life, keeping your money safely in your account. The friction fortress is not about being a miser or punishing yourself. It is about creating a protective buffer zone, giving your rational mind a fighting chance to catch up with your emotional impulses. But friction alone is not enough, because eventually, the pressure will find a way out. Friction is an incredibly powerful tool, but friction alone is not a complete solution. If you only focus on building walls to stop yourself from spending, you are ignoring a fundamental truth about human nature. We are not machines, and you cannot permanently suppress an emotional response through sheer restriction. If you put too much pressure inside a pipe and block all the exits, eventually the pipe is going to burst. In the world of personal finance, bursting looks like completely abandoning your budget and going on a massive, guilt-ridden spending binge that sets you back for months. You need a safe release valve. This brings us to the second rule of the system, which is creating something I call the chaos fund. A chaos fund is not the same thing as a standard emergency fund. An emergency fund is designed for objective physical disasters. It is the money you use when your transmission blows up, or your roof starts leaking, or you suddenly lose your job. A chaos fund is entirely different. It is an emotional emergency fund designed specifically to handle the unpredictable, messy reality of being a tired human being in a stressful world. Traditional budgeting advice usually fails because it treats you like a perfectly rational robot. It assumes that every single dollar should be optimized, invested, or spent on something productive. It leaves absolutely zero room for the days when you just feel completely exhausted and sad. When you try to stick to a rigid, optimized budget and life inevitably punches you in the gut, any money you spend to comfort yourself feels like a massive failure. You feel like you broke the rules, and that shame causes you to spiral out of control. The Chaos Fund changes the rules of the game. It acknowledges that bad days are not a possibility, they are an absolute certainty. You know for a fact that at some point this month, you are going to feel overwhelmed. Instead of pretending that day will not arrive, you systematically prepare for it. You set up a completely separate checking account. It cannot be tied to the account you use for rent, and it should not be visible when you log in to check your long-term savings. It needs to live in its own isolated ecosystem. Once the account is open, you automate it. Every single time you get paid, before you pay a single bill or buy a single coffee, you have your bank automatically transfer a set amount of money into the Chaos Fund. It does not have to be a massive amount. It could be $20 a paycheck, or $50, or whatever fits safely within your actual income. The amount matters far less than the automation and the specific intent behind the money. By automating this transfer, you are building an emotional shock absorber into your financial architecture. You are taking a tiny slice of your income and officially designating its purpose as stress relief. This completely shifts the psychological narrative. You are no longer stealing money from your future self to comfort your present self. You have pre-funded your own bad days. Let us walk through exactly how this works in practice. It is Tuesday evening, the world has been terrible to you, and your willpower battery is completely dead. The cortisol is flooding your system, and you are desperately seeking that dopamine hit. First, you hit the friction fortress. You try to wait it out. But sometimes, the friction is not enough. Sometimes, you genuinely just need to order the incredibly overpriced takeout and watch a movie to survive the night. Instead of feeling a wave of panic, you reach for the specific debit card tied to your Chaos Fund. You look at the balance, and you see that you have $80 sitting there. You order the food, you pay for it. And here is the most important part of the entire process. You do not feel a single drop of guilt. You do not wake up the next morning feeling sick about your bank account. Because you used the Chaos Fund, your primary checking account is perfectly intact. Your rent money is safe. Your investments are untouched. You did not fail at your budget. In fact, you executed your financial plan flawlessly. You experienced a high-stress event, you recognized the need for an emotional release, and you utilized the specific tool you built for that exact scenario. You controlled the chaos instead of letting the chaos control you. Eliminating the guilt is the secret weapon of the Chaos Fund. Guilt is what causes people to give up on their finances completely. When you remove the shame from stress spending, you remove its power to destroy your life. You are giving yourself permission to be human. with guardrails firmly in place to protect your future. But what happens when the chaos fund runs dry, or when you realize that spending money is not actually fixing the root of the exhaustion? That is when we have to deploy the final, most profound rule of the system. The chaos fund is a vital safety net. But what happens when the fund runs dry, or when you realize that spending money is not actually fixing the root cause of your exhaustion? Friction stops the bleeding, and the chaos fund removes the guilt. But the ultimate goal is to permanently rewire your brain so it no longer associates spending money with emotional survival. This brings us to the third and final rule of the system, which is the dopamine substitution protocol. You have to understand that your brain is incredibly stubborn. You cannot simply delete a coping mechanism without putting something else in its place. If you just take the credit card away and offer no alternative, your brain will panic. To build a successful substitution, you have to remember what we discussed earlier about why you are spending money in the first place. You are not buying the physical item. You are buying agency. You are buying the feeling of having power over your environment. Therefore, the activity you use to replace spending must fulfill that exact same psychological requirement. It must be a zero-cost, high-agency physical action that produces an immediate, visible result. It cannot be passive. This is why the standard advice of just distracting yourself never works. Financial gurus will tell you that when you feel the urge to stress spend, you should just turn on the television, scroll through social media, or take a nap. Those are passive activities. They numb you, but they do not restore your sense of control. When you buy something online, you are taking an active step that forces the universe to respond to you. Your substitution must also be an active step. You have to do something that visibly alters the physical world around you. One of the most effective ways to execute the dopamine substitution protocol is through micro-cleaning. I know that sounds like a terrible chore, especially when you are already exhausted, but you have to look at it through the lens of brain chemistry. If you are sitting on your bed feeling overwhelmed by a chaotic day, your brain feels like it has no control over anything. If you stand up and spend exactly 5 minutes clearing off your nightstand, or wiping down the kitchen counter, or organizing a single drawer, you are performing a highly concentrated act of agency. You are taking a disordered piece of the physical world and bending it to your will. You are creating order where there was chaos. The visual feedback of seeing a clean surface triggers a genuine earned dopamine release in your brain. You did a thing, and the environment responded exactly how you wanted it to. It mimics the exact psychological satisfaction of clicking the Buy Now button, but it costs absolutely nothing, and it actually improves your living space. Another powerful substitution method is aggressive physical exertion. Remember that cortisol is the chemical designed to make you run or fight. When you are stressed, your body is physically primed for action, but sitting in bed, scrolling on your phone completely suppresses that physical need. Instead of trying to medicate the tension with a purchase, you have to physically burn the cortisol out of your system. When the urge to spend hits you hard, drop the phone and immediately do 20 push-ups, or put on your shoes and go for a 10-minute walk as fast as you possibly can. You are not exercising for fitness, you are exercising for chemical regulation. By elevating your heart rate and exhausting your muscles, you are completing the biological stress cycle that your body initiated earlier in the day. When you finish the walk or the push-ups, the physical exhaustion forces your nervous system to calm down. The frantic desire to buy something will almost entirely evaporate, replaced by a deep, physical sense of relief. A third option is the act of creation. Consumerism is inherently passive. You are taking something that someone else made and absorbing it. Creation is the exact opposite. When you feel powerless, finding a way to make something with your own hands is the ultimate assertion of control. It does not have to be a masterpiece. It can be sketching on a blank piece of paper, cooking a meal from random ingredients you already have in your pantry, or even writing down all your chaotic thoughts in a journal. The act of transforming raw materials into something new forces your brain out of its frantic survival mode and into a state of focused flow. You are proving to yourself that you are not just a consumer waiting to be marketed to. You are an active participant in your own life. You are taking back the power to generate value without relying on a transaction. Now, here is the hardest part about the dopamine substitution protocol. The first time you try it, your brain is going to fight you. Your brain wants the easy button. It knows that typing a credit card number is physically easier than doing push-ups or cleaning a kitchen counter. When you try to pivot to the new activity, a little voice in your head will tell you that it will not work, that you are too tired, and that you just deserve to buy the takeout. You have to push through that resistance for exactly 3 minutes. That is the critical window. If you can force yourself to start the physical action and sustain it for just 3 minutes, the neurological shift will begin. The tight chest will loosen. The momentum of the physical task will take over. And every single time you successfully substitute an action for a purchase, you are fundamentally rewiring your brain. You are weakening the neural pathway that connects stress to spending, and you are building a new, unbreakable pathway that connects stress to self-empowerment. Over time, you will stop looking to your bank account for comfort, and you will start looking to yourself. Once you understand the chemical loops driving your behavior and the physical systems required to break them, we have to look at the cold, hard mathematics of what happens if you do not change. Psychology explains why we fall into the trap, and systems give us the tools to climb out of it, but math is what shows us the true, devastating cost of staying inside. We need to look at the numbers slowly, because our brains are naturally very bad at understanding how small actions accumulate over long periods of time. Let us take a highly specific, painfully common scenario. Imagine you have a moderately stressful life, and as a coping mechanism, you spend an average of $50 a week on things you do not really need. Maybe it is a couple of expensive food deliveries when you are too tired to cook. Maybe it is a random gadget you found scrolling late at night, or an article of clothing you bought just to feel a quick burst of joy. $50 a week does not feel like a financial disaster. In the moment, it just feels like the basic cost of surviving the modern world. This is where the mental accounting trap catches us again. We look at $50 and tell ourselves it is harmless. We rationalize that $50 is not going to buy us a house. It is not going to let us retire early. It is not going to radically alter our financial trajectory in any meaningful way. So we give ourselves permission to let it slide. We surrender the $50 because we fail to see its actual power. We treat it as isolated, insignificant collateral damage from a bad week. But let us scale that number up just slightly. $50 a week becomes roughly $200 a month. For a lot of people, $200 still does not sound like a life-changing amount of money. It is the cost of a utility bill or a modest grocery run. It easily gets lost in the chaotic shuffle of monthly expenses. But when you stretch that habit across a single year, the math starts to get slightly uncomfortable. $200 a month becomes $2,400 a year. Think about what $2,400 actually represents. For many people, that is an entire month of rent completely covered. It is a massive chunk of a high-interest credit card debt wiped off the map. It is a completely funded emergency account that could stop a broken transmission from ruining your life. You are literally bleeding out thousands of dollars a year, one minor stressful Tuesday at a time. But even that number does not reveal the true horror of the situation. The real villain in personal finance is not just the money you lose. It is the concept of opportunity cost. Opportunity cost is the invisible price tag attached to every single dollar you spend. It is the mathematical reality that money spent on temporary emotional relief today is money that cannot be used to buy your permanent freedom tomorrow. To see the true opportunity cost, we have to look at what happens if you take that exact same $200 a month and deploy it differently. Imagine if, instead of using that money to buy temporary dopamine spikes, you redirected it into a basic, low-cost investment like an S&P 500 index fund. Historically, the stock market returns an average of around 8% per year over the long term. Let us run the math on a 10-year timeline. If you keep spending $200 a month on stress relief, you will have handed over $24,000 in cash to various corporations. You will have nothing to show for it, except a pile of old receipts and a faded memory of takeout food. But if you had invested that $200 a month at an 8% return, you would not just have $24,000. Thanks to the magic of compound interest, your money would have grown to nearly $37,000. Now let us stretch that exact same habit over a 20-year timeline, which is a very realistic window for a working professional. If you continue the stress spending, you will burn through $48,000 of your own hard-earned cash. But if you keep investing that $200 a month for 20 years, the compound interest snowballs into something incredible. That account would be worth over $118,000. Think about that number for a second. Over $100,000 is gone. It vanished. It evaporated into thin air because you allowed the friction of modern life to slowly bleed you dry, $50 at a time. That $100,000 is not just a number on a spreadsheet. It is years of your life that you will have to spend working instead of resting. It is the freedom to walk away from a toxic boss. It is the ability to handle a medical crisis without losing your home. The profound tragedy of stress spending is that the exact thing you are trying to buy, the feeling of control and agency, is the exact thing you are mathematically destroying. You are trading permanent, structural financial power for a temporary, 5-minute chemical illusion. You are handing away the keys to your future freedom just to make a random Tuesday night feel slightly more tolerable. This is not meant to make you feel guilty. Guilt is useless. This math is meant to arm you with a cold, undeniable logic that can cut through the emotional fog of a bad day. When you look at the $50 cart at checkout, you are no longer deciding if you can afford to lose $50. You are deciding if you can afford to lose over $100,000 of your future freedom. When you see the true price tag, implementing the friction systems we talked about stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like the most important rescue mission of your life. Now, you might be thinking that this all sounds incredibly exhausting. You are already surviving on the bare minimum amount of mental energy. The idea of setting up a friction fortress, opening a new bank account for a chaos fund, and forcing yourself to do push-ups instead of buying takeout probably feels like a massive, impossible mountain to climb. You might be telling yourself that you will just wait until life calms down a little bit before you start trying to fix your financial habits. I completely understand that feeling. When you are deeply overwhelmed, any new task, even one designed to help you, just feels like another heavy weight added to your shoulders. It is perfectly natural to want to choose the path of least resistance, but you have to look at the reality of the situation. Life is never going to magically calm down permanently. There will always be another unexpected bill, another stressful day at work, and another complex relationship problem to navigate. The world is fundamentally chaotic, and waiting for the perfect time to build your defenses means you will be waiting forever. You have to compare the temporary, upfront energy it takes to build these systems against the permanent, crushing exhaustion of living with constant financial anxiety. Setting up automation and deleting saved credit cards might take an hour of concentrated effort on a Sunday afternoon. But living paycheck to paycheck, waking up at 2 in the morning worrying about credit card debt, and feeling completely powerless over your own future takes a massive toll on your physical and mental health every single day of your life. You are already doing the hard work. Worrying about money is incredibly hard work. Surviving the shame of a depleted bank account is hard work. You are just deploying your energy in the wrong direction. By shifting your focus away from relying on willpower and toward building automated systems, you are investing your energy into something that will actually pay you back. You are trading a lifetime of passive anxiety for a brief moment of active discomfort. To prove how simple this transition can be, I want to give you a very specific challenge. I do not want you to try and implement every single rule we just talked about today. If you try to change your entire life overnight, your brain will reject the new operating system, and you will crash. We are going to start incredibly small. I want you to complete one highly targeted micro action within the next 24 hours to break the cycle. Here is your 24-hour challenge. Pick up your phone right now, open the single shopping app or food delivery service that you abuse the most when you are stressed, go into the payment settings, and manually delete your saved credit card. That is it. Do not delete the app if you are not ready. Do not set up the new bank account yet. Do not worry about investing. Just remove the saved payment information from one single platform. This micro action takes less than 60 seconds, but it is a massive psychological victory. you have just laid the very first brick of your friction fortress. The next time you have a terrible day and open that specific app, you are going to hit that wall. You will be forced to physically retrieve your card, and in that tiny window of annoyance, your rational brain will have a fighting chance to save your money. By proving to yourself that you can control this one tiny aspect of your digital environment, you will build the confidence required to tackle the rest of the systems. Look, here is the truth about money that society tries so desperately to hide from you. Money is a terrible emotional painkiller. It was never designed to heal your trauma, fix your bad days, or restore your sense of control. When you try to use it as medicine, it acts exactly like a poison. It treats the symptom for 5 minutes while aggressively destroying the foundation of your future. True wealth has absolutely nothing to do with buying expensive things to signal your status to the world. True wealth is not about having a package delivered to your door to make you feel important. True wealth is quiet. It is the profound, unshakable peace of knowing that a bad Tuesday at work cannot threaten your survival. It is the ability to look at a broken down car or an unexpected medical bill and feel a mild sense of annoyance instead of a blinding wave of sheer panic. We have to completely rewrite the story we tell ourselves about spending. The next time you are sitting in the dark, feeling the weight of the world on your chest, I want you to remember that your money is your ultimate defense mechanism. Every dollar you refuse to surrender to a temporary impulse is a dollar that buys back a piece of your permanent freedom. You are not depriving yourself when you choose not to spend. You are actively protecting yourself. What is one specific trigger that always makes you want to stress, spend, and what free physical action are you going to substitute it with next time? Let me know in the comments below.